Today we're going to be talking about international trade, and we'll be on page 3 of your interactive notebook. So over the past few years, when I say few, I mean the past like 50, international trade has been dramatically growing ever since the conclusion of World War II, pretty much, as you can see on these graphs. And as you also can see, these graphs are about 15 years outdated, so the trends might be moving even more. But we've got crazy amounts of trade. They estimate trade has grown by about 12,000% since World War II, which is a crazy number. 12,000, not 12%, 12,000% that it's grown since. And there's a lot of different things for why global trade is growing in importance. Why are we trading more and more and more? Why do we even trade at all? So let's look at a few different factors. There are 3 main factors for why trade has been growing so much in the recent decades. 1 is advances in transportation. 2 is improved communications. And 3 is changes in the types of goods that are being traded. So let's break down each of these. Advances in transportation. Obviously, as we know in the 21st century, it's a lot easier to move around the world. You know, way back in the day, you maybe moved by foot, you moved by horse and buggy, you moved by horse, whatever. Now you've got very large container ships, you've got jets, you've got possibly drones coming in soon. So moving around the world is just so much quicker and so much faster. Jets can go faster, they can hold more goods. So not only is transportation faster, but they're bigger, they can hold bigger things. So the fact that we can move goods around the world easier is going to move trade further and further and further. Improved communications. Now, these days, I don't know if you have one, but there's this thing called the cell phone. Satellites and phones and computers are linked up around the world. We can communicate instantly. We can create business transactions in the blink of an eye. You can order something on Amazon and sometimes have it there tonight. And now, that might not necessarily be coming from another country, but still just the fact that you have this technology at your hands and things are being delivered faster and faster and faster because of technology. It's just amazing. So by being able to communicate and also throw in here technology is also improving global trade. We also have a change in the types of goods. Way back in the day, we used to trade things like grains, coal, steel, things that are very large and very bulky, and then are going to take up a lot of room on a ship to try and send somewhere. It's heavy, it's difficult to ship. Now, in the 21st century, or in the 20th, moving into the 21st century, trading became, let's trade manufactured goods. So we're not trading necessarily the raw materials, let's trade the finished product. So some of the biggest things that are being traded are computers and electronic devices. They're much easier to transport. They're easier to sell the finished product. The work has been done. You don't have to worry about assembling the product. You're just going to sell what's already done. So it makes life a little bit easier for the producer and then ultimately the consumer because they're going to get it quicker. So why are we trading? Most countries are pretty big. Countries are trading for the same reason that you might trade your lunch, to get something that they want at the lowest cost. And again, we've said it before in this class, cost doesn't always mean monetary cost, like it's a cheap good. It could be time. Time is a cost. The idea that I don't have to give up my time assembling a product because it's already done for me. So a lot of countries do lack resources or possibly a large enough market to produce everything that their citizens need. But countries that are developed usually have everything they need. So why are they still trading? Think about it. The United States probably could produce a lot of things on our own. So why are we going out and why are we trading? The biggest reason is because of opportunity costs and giving up these costs. So each country is going to specialize. We have something known as specialization. That's when we choose to produce one or few goods and services, not producing everything under the sun. Large countries benefit when they specialize in the production and then they trade for other ones. It makes more financial sense for them. Trying to figure out what you're going to specialize in and what to trade for is going to be determined by something known as absolute and comparative advantage. And we're going to watch a quick video on that.
Say that you had two friends who were interested in starting their own businesses. Jack and Jill are both talents as pizza makers and as photographers, but they have differing abilities. Jack can take 30 pictures in an hour, but only cook 2 pizzas. Meanwhile, Jill can take 20 pictures, but make 5 pizzas in that same hour. It's not just enough to say that Jill can make more pizzas or that Jack can take more pictures. Instead, economists use the term absolute advantage. An absolute advantage means that you can do more of something during a given time. That means that in the example, Jack has an absolute advantage in taking pictures, whereas Jill has an absolute advantage in making pizzas. Jill also has permission to send as many of those pizzas as she wants to me. So, let's say that Jack and Jill set up their respective businesses. Jack's photography and Jill's pizzeria. Both are chugging away, content in their knowledge that they are working to make exactly what they should make. But then, one day, a brand new pizza oven magically appears in Jack's shop. Now he can make 6 pizzas in an hour. This means that Jack now has the absolute advantage in both pizza production and photography, and probably a few new friends to boot. But what should he do? It might be tempting to just look at the absolute advantage, but that is ignoring the costs of the items. In fact, a famous economist named David Ricardo said we shouldn't look at absolute advantage, but instead the opportunity cost of doing each. Whoever could do something for the lower opportunity cost, Ricardo reasoned, was the person who could actually do it cheaper. So let's look at those costs. Each pizza that Jack makes costs him 5 pictures, whereas it only costs Jill 4 pictures to make a pizza. Since Jill can make pizzas for cheaper, she should probably stick to that. Jill has the comparative advantage when it comes to making pizza, because she pays a lower opportunity cost. Now let's look at it from the perspective of photographs. Each photograph costs Jack 20% of a pizza, since he can take 5 photographs in the amount of time he spends making 1 pizza. On the other hand, each photograph costs Jill 25% of a pizza, since she can take 4 photographs in the amount of time it takes her to make a pizza. Look at the percentages, and you'll see that Jack can take each picture for a lower opportunity cost. As a result, he has the comparative advantage in photography. It's important to know that while someone can have every absolute advantage, they will never have every comparative advantage. Notice that all the examples I used above completely lacked any discussion of the money made, but instead solely on the units produced. This is really important, as it helps to explain a number of very important facts in economics that are easily misconstrued. This is because price is not a direct function of the ability to produce something. That idea helps to separate capitalism from other ideas, namely communism, that say everyone should make the same. Jill may be able to sell each of her pizzas for $15, making her $60 an hour, while Jack can sell his pictures for $3 a piece, making him $90 an hour. In case you're wondering where I got those prices from, I just made them up. Jill and Jack are free to choose their own prices based on what the demand of a particular item can justify. But we'll talk about that in a future lesson. However, something that comparative advantage definitely and clearly explains is the importance of unit cost. With more economies becoming more and more developed, a number of companies often find it cheaper to set up shop overseas. This has resulted in a number of jobs, often in manufacturing, being moved out of American communities to places overseas. Needless to say, this is a cause for a lot of angry people. It has also led to a number of politicians of all ideologies making statements from American manufacturing is dead to we should stop all jobs from going overseas. From an economic perspective, these people are forgetting the importance of units, not price, in determining comparative advantage. Sure, it costs a company $25 an hour for Americans to work in a factory, but people in Southeast Asia or Latin America could be a steal at $10 an hour. However, remember that comparative advantage hinges on units produced, not cost. Assuming the number of workers is the same, if the American factory can produce more than 5 units in the amount of time it takes the other factory to make 2, the American factory will still have the absolute advantage. In this lesson, we learned about the difference between absolute and comparative advantages. We reviewed the concepts of scarcity and utility, as well as how they affect opportunity cost. Then we saw that the absolute advantage goes to the producer who can make the most of a given good during a period of time. While a company can have every absolute advantage, it can never have every comparative advantage. This is because a comparative advantage is calculated by finding out who can produce a good for the lowest opportunity cost.
So again, let's talk about absolute and comparative advantage. Absolute advantage is the ability to produce more units of a good or a service than another producer using all of the same quantity of resources. So you have all the same time, the same materials, the same amount of workers, whatever. The person or the company that can create more units has the absolute advantage in that field. Comparative advantage is the ability to produce a good or service at a lower opportunity cost than another producer. So you're giving up less. So you'll take less time, you make more units. Excuse me. So what does that all mean? Comparative advantage is the economic basis for specialization and trade. And again, going back to specialization, think about you at school. You don't go through, in your 4 years, you don't go through every single career area. Because if you did, you wouldn't be as well skilled as the one you picked. So you might have, a little bit of knowledge of all 16 of them, but if you pick just one, you're going to be really, really good in that just one. So you're specializing in a trade. It's the same idea for a country. They're going to specialize in one, maybe a few different goods, instead of trying to create everything. So if a country or an individual specializes in producing the good that they have the comparative advantage in, and then they're going to trade for the goods that the other country has a comparative advantage in, both parties are going to be better off. They're going to give up the least. Okay? So again, we've been watching and talking about international trade and why it's been growing in importance. Make sure you fill this into your interactive notebook and tune in next time. Thanks for watching.